Regular people sometimes make history. And if you are a regular person and you find yourself in the middle of something where you realize that what you do is really going to make history, when you realize that you personally are about to become an important part of the historical record, how do you handle that? How do you comport yourself? How do you behave? Because when we think of the historical record, we not only think about, famous people in history, we also think of the drama of how history is presented, right? So like Washington crossing the Delaware, right? Our first president, when he was still just a heroic revolutionary general. George Washington making that dramatic, dangerous charge across the icy Delaware River, crossing the Delaware to rout the sleeping British forces the morning after Christmas. People make a point to see this painting in person at some point during their lifetimes, right? And the vividness of the color in this picture is part of what's so striking for this as history. Because for us as a country, this is as close as we get to ancient history, right? I mean, this is the founding of the United States of America. When it comes to the historical record, it's this interesting thing that the further you go back, the more likely it is that there is vivid color in the portrayals of what happened a really, really long time ago. I mean, the history that we have before cameras, the history people had to paint in order to remember, that history comes to us in vivid color. I mean, whether it was a painting of a scene like Washington crossing the Delaware, or whether it's portraits, where painters picked up a brush and the subject sitting for the portrait sat as still as he could or as still as she could. And the great figures of our history, they presented themselves for all time. For us, for whenever we might come along, right? We see those historical figures from way, way back. We see them in color. Then we got the camera. And at first, and for a long time, we had only black and white film or black and white photographic processes. And it was tricky processes for a long time. You had to sit there for a very long period of time while the exposure happened, long enough that in big group portraits, sometimes people would start at one end of the group and then run to the other side of the group so they could be in the picture twice. But mostly the style at the time was to sit very somberly, to sit not just still, but serious. So history might record you both unblurred and also as a person of gravity and heft, serious person in serious times. In the long period between the invention of the camera and the invention and then the popularizing of color film, our history comes to us in black and white as though the world itself had no color, right? So it ends up being funny, right? There's no black and white photos of George Washington because there are no photos of George Washington. George Washington got painted for history, so he ends up being a four-color president. But FDR, in our memory, he happened in black and white. I mean, Washington and FDR obviously both ate apples that were red. They both walked on grass that was green, but we see them the way they were recorded in color or in black and white for history. Well, now today, painting is for art and photography is for art too, but for most of us, it's free for nothing. Today, we take more pictures of ourselves than we could ever possibly catalog or need or maybe even look at. Pictures now aren't just a dime a dozen, they are truly ephemeral. We take pictures that we intend to exist only for the milliseconds that somebody might view them on a phone before they disappear. We take all these pictures of ourselves in particular, and they're just now the most transient thing imaginable. Photography now is ubiquitous, right? Posing is basically a form of looking in the mirror. We are no longer posing for the sake of history, except in those rare moments when we are. This is a woman named Barbara Dunn. Barbara Dunn is the longtime clerk in Hinds County, Mississippi. Hinds County, Mississippi is where the capital city of Jackson, Mississippi is. For the past few years, Barbara Dunn has been in the position of saying no to people who wanted to get married. Because of her job, she personally has been recorded for history over and over again as the face of the law in Mississippi, as the person who would not and could not give gay couples marriage licenses when they asked. But in Mississippi, at that county clerk's office, they kept asking over and over.
Come on, may I help you?
We'd like to apply for a marriage license.
I don't know if you've ever been married, but if you've had that bond with someone, you know the feeling and what it's like to want that.
The statute states that we take your application, but we will not issue the license because of the law. Okay, you understand?
We love each other so much.
We know that life is short, and if anything happens to us, we want to be protected. So,
I understand.
She says, I understand, there at the end. That video is from 2 summers ago, from July 2013. That's from the Campaign for Southern Equality. Well, less than a week ago, on Friday, the Supreme Court established marriage as a fundamental right in all 50 states. And so this week, history was able to record the marriages of people who had been waiting a very, very long time to get married. People who've been trying and trying and trying and getting told no. People who'd been getting told no, sometimes by clerks and local officials who were happy to say no all of these years. But you know, some local clerks, some local officials, it clearly broke their own hearts to have to say no to these folks because the law would not let them say yes until now. Now the law says that in all these little county clerks' offices all across the country and all across the Deep South even, they can say yes. When they started marrying couples in Barbara Dunn's office in Hinds County, Mississippi on Monday of this week, the newlyweds stopped by for a photo before they left, and so did Barbara Dunn. Just look at this. Look at this photo. Look at her. She wore the brightest pink for the occasion, right? History in full color. And you can see that she smiled a little bit, but not too much. I mean, future generations will want to know that this moment mattered. All over the country, now all over the Deep South, the last federal courts still being used as an excuse to not follow the Supreme Court's rulings. Those courts, as of today, have now ruled in Louisiana, in Kentucky, in Alabama, in Hinds County, Mississippi. It's done. It's history. It's bright, serious, very personal history. It's done. It's been a big week.